All right, so we're in section 4.6 today, solving inequalities with multiplication and division. So in 4.5, how do we solve inequalities? Using addition and subtraction. All right, so much of what we're learning today, you've already learned, okay? Now you don't even have to write this down. It's just, again, to show you the similarity in the pattern. You solve inequalities the same way you solve equations. That does not change when it comes to multiplication and division. So when you look at these problems, guys, you should have an idea how to solve them because we've already solved them using equations, okay? So same thing here, all right? X over 5 is less than or equal to negative 3, all right? Can anybody tell me what would I do to solve for X? Want to raise your hand? Kennedy? Yes. Now, is that something that you're allowed to do in your head and not show your work? No. Okay, so I have a lot of you guys kind of fighting me on this showing work part of it. You need to show me how you're multiplying to cancel this out. You say, Ms. Kinder, isn't it obvious if I'm multiplying the other side by 5 that I did it to both sides? My answer would be yes, but you still need to show your steps. Okay, it's important for you as these problems become increasingly more difficult that you understand the process. All right, so now X is isolated, which is what I wanted, less than or equal to negative 15. Just multiply. Okay, based on your test last week, I think we have a pretty good handle on graphing solutions. Okay, so that's really kind of my gauge, and a lot of you did very well in this section. What number goes in the middle?
Negative 15.
Give us a sec, but yes, negative 15. All right, now think about it. Number line to the left, it needs to be 1 unit less than negative 15. What value is 1 unit less?
Negative 16.
Negative 16. And then on the other side?
Negative 14.
Okay, will this be an open dot or a closed dot? Closed. Why?
Because I have the little bar.
Because I got the equal to bar. So a week ago, that question was challenging for many of you because it was a new concept. But now you're spitting out the answer like, yes, this is automatic. So that's good. That's where we should be, okay? That we see that equal to bar and we know it's going to be a closed dot. And which way does our arrow go now? To the left. Less than. Okay? Now the next one is challenging. Can anybody tell me why this problem would be a little more challenging? Not necessarily. Okay, because there's a fraction.
It's backwards.
It's backwards. The variable comes after the inequality. And remember what I told you. You have to read the variable first in your solution to make sure you get the arrow in the correct direction. Okay? So technically, this is a fraction being multiplied by a variable. Agreed? Okay? So technically, I need to divide by 2/3. But what happens when you divide a fraction? You got a KFC. You have to flip it and then multiply. So that's why we say just go straight to multiplying by the reciprocal. And that cancels it out. Again, guys, I need to see this step. So that's probably my biggest complaint with the test. All right? And one that we need to continue to work on is showing your steps. You might think that this is unnecessary, but I need you to trust me that even though some of these you can do in your head, that the process is just as important, okay? So times both sides by 3/2. Wait, where did I get negative 4.5? I thought it was going to be negative 9/2. Is that the same thing? Why do you think a decimal would be more beneficial in your answer than a fraction?
Because it's easier to work with. It would be dumb to have
Not dumb, but
it's harder to
okay.
Mark on a number.
On a number line, we don't usually deal with fractions. Would you agree? But a decimal value, okay, I can work with a decimal value. So that's why we want our answers in decimal values. Now, the numbers to the left and right don't necessarily need to be decimal values also. You just need to choose a value that is less than negative 4.5. Could I say negative 5?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's less than. But if I go down by 1/2, I need to go up by 1/2. Meaning, don't put a positive 14 to the right of it, okay? Obviously, it's greater than, but it's a different interval. So basically, you need to choose the same intervals. All right. Open dot or closed dot, guys?
Open.
Open. Now, here's the question. If I'm reading my variable first, P, okay, does my arrow go left or right?
Left.
To the left. This is saying all solutions or all numbers less than negative 4.5 will be a solution. Less than goes left. If you look at that and read negative 4.5 first, you're going to think it's a greater than sign, but it is not. The P has to be read first. The variable reads first. Okay? All right. So, yeah, that's the part. That's one of the catches here with inequalities that you have to understand. Okay? So, we're going to go on now to example 2. Okay? We're going to go to example 2 now. Have you solved an equation similar to these?
Yes.
Absolutely, you have. So, nothing changes. Okay, nothing changes. You still do inverse operations to solve, and then you just graph your solution. So I like to describe these sections kind of like we kind of go on cruise control because we already understand the process to get to our answer, and then we just make a few small adjustments because it's an inequality. All right, so write down the first one, 6x is greater than negative 18, and solve and graph. So what do I do to both sides?
Divided by 6.
Divide by 6, and x is greater than negative 3. Who got that? Negative 3?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you got negative 3. Okay, so open dot or closed on negative 3?
Open.
Open, and left or right?
Right.
To the right. Okay, what do you think is going to be challenging about the next problem? What's going to be challenging?
The decimal.
The decimal and the variables after the inequality symbol. So I have to make sure I read it first. Divide both sides by 2.5. Don't you love when you divide by a decimal and it ends up being a whole number?
Yes.
Okay, I love it when that happens. Okay, so Q, hold on, is greater than 6. So open dot on 6. Did your arrow go right? Did your arrow go right? Okay, so walking around, I think a lot of you guys are really catching on to this. It's just getting those arrows graphed in the correct direction. Okay, so read the variable first. Q is greater than 6. All right, so now we do have an exception to the rule, okay? The exception to the rule says when there's a negative connected to the variable by multiplication or division. So this has nothing to do with addition and subtraction and negatives. It's only multiplication and division. But if it's connected to the variable and you have to multiply or divide by a negative to solve, then you will reverse your inequality. Okay? And x is less than negative 6. All right, so that's what my rule says. We're about to look at a couple more. Up to this point, okay, we solved them the exact same way as we solved equations until now where we have one small exception. If a negative number is connected to the variable by multiplication or division, I need to reverse my inequality. Don't necessarily have to write the words down, guys. Okay, just write down this equation or this inequality here. Okay, so I reverse my inequality when a negative number is connected to the variable by multiplication or division. Okay, hold on. Shh. Okay, all right, so now let's solve these, guys. Again, the process is very similar. Like, you should be very familiar with the process of solving these types of equations and inequalities. We've been doing this for several weeks now. What would I need to do to solve for x? What do I do? Just talk me through it. Divide everything by, not 4, but negative 4. Okay, divide both sides by negative 4. But again, here's the catch, okay? With an inequality, if I divide by a negative, what did we say happens to our symbol? It flips. So now instead of it being less than, now it is greater than, and now what's negative 12 divided by negative 4?
3.
Not negative 3, positive 3, and now I can just graph it like I normally do. Okay, so what number goes in the middle of my number line?
3.
3, 2, and 4. Open dot or close dot. Open. And arrow goes left or right. To the right. Okay, now this last one is very challenging for a couple reasons. Okay, I want you to try to solve and graph it. I'm going to walk around and kind of check your work, and then we'll go over it step by step. So we multiply both sides by -2. I saw a lot of people doing that, and then you kind of messing up on the other side. So remember, if you multiply one side by -2, you got to multiply the other side by -2. And because the negative was connected to our variable, what happened to our inequality? It switched, okay? It switched to less than or equal to. All right, and now here's my challenge. How do I read this solution? How do I read it? Open dot or closed?
Close.
Closed. And which way does my arrow go?
Right.
To the right. Y is greater than or equal to. You say, well, I just read it. It looked like a less than or equal to. That's because you forgot to read the variable first. Okay? All right. Did anybody get that completely right? Okay. How many people messed up the arrow? That's a really common mistake. Okay. So, guys, recognize that and don't mess it up on your homework, okay? All right. Yeah, you have homework. Okay. Here's a challenge question for you. There's too much chatter in the background, please, okay? I want you now to give me an inequality where you would have to reverse the symbol to solve. You don't necessarily have to solve it, but now I want you to write the inequality. So there's no addition and subtraction here because you don't reverse it with those operations. All right? Give me an inequality where you would have to reverse the symbol to solve. Someone give me your inequality. Gabe?
Negative 10x, and I have negative 50.
Okay, so maybe less than -50 or greater than -50. But what's important, sorry, I forgot the x. What's important is that there's a negative connected to the variable, so you'd have to reverse it. Morgan, what did you write?
Negative 5x is greater than 50.
Perfect. Okay, what's another one? Miles.
Okay, negative 4 is greater than or equal to negative 2x.
Okay, that'll work. Did anybody write one with division, like in a fraction? Isaiah?
10 is greater than or equal to negative x over 5.
Okay, negative x over 5. Perfect. And what do all of these have in common? The negatives connected to the variable, so the inequality would have to reverse to solve. All right, so what's a lesson without, what do we call them, a riddle? Okay, all right, so here we go. A submarine descends. We always try to kind of form a real life picture of what's happening here. Has anybody ever been farther than like 10 feet underwater?
Yes.
Okay, has anybody ever been to an aquarium? Where you kind of like go underneath and you can see like underneath the water. All right, so that's probably our closest example. Has anybody ever been in a submarine?
No.
By chance?
I can't do submarines.
Okay, the thought of it kind of does put me in a little bit of a panic thinking about being 1,000 feet underwater and like there's no way to escape. Okay, so, all right, so here's our scenario. Okay, guys, it's important that we're able to visualize what's actually happening here. All right? I need you to read it to yourself as I'm reading it out loud. All right, a submarine descends 37.5 meters per minute from sea level to explore a recent shipwreck. The shipwreck rests on the ocean floor at an elevation deeper than negative 3,810 meters, the elevation of Titanic shipwreck. How long does it take? Okay, so that's what I'm solving for. How long does it take the submarine to reach the shipwreck? So we are descending. Descending would be positive or negative? Negative 37.5 meters per minute. So we'll just do M for meters per minute, whatever the variable might be. Okay? And we need to get to an elevation deeper than 3810, which would be negative. Okay, so here's the question. If it's deeper than, don't say it out loud yet. If it's deeper than that level, would it be less than or greater than? Don't say it out loud yet. Write it down on your paper. How many votes do I have for less than? All right, you should be saying less than. If it's deeper, I'm going farther down, and any value in the negative that's deeper or greater than would be less than, all right? So I know that takes a little bit of thinking, but if we're going down 4,000 feet, that's less than 3810, okay? Now how would you solve?
Divide by 37.
Divide by negative 37.5 and negative 37.5. All right, now I want you to write your answer. All right, did you write M is greater than 101? Is it 0.6? 0.6. Okay, minutes. Wait a second, I thought it was less than.
But it was
But it's a negative.
But I divided by a negative, okay? And remember, 101.6, okay, that's got to be positive anyway, because that's minutes. You can't have negative minutes. All right, so it's just over an hour and a half, right? If I'm going down, 37.5 meters per minute. Okay, so that's one. But, I mean, in real life, I mean, how many of us are really going to, get on a submarine and go all the way down to a depth of the Titanic? Probably none of us. But how many of us are going to have a job? Anybody going to have a job? Okay, so odds are, just like me when I was in high school and I worked at Applebee's as a hostess, that was my first job. Is Applebee's still even a restaurant?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. I haven't eaten there in a long time. I'm in bed by 10 o'clock. Okay, yeah, I'm tired. Okay, guys, listen up. So if you're making $7.25 an hour, okay, that should say make, not R. Okay, so you make $7.25 an hour at your summer job. $7.25 an hour. That's positive, right? You're not paying them to work. Okay? Write and solve an inequality that represents the number of hours you can work to earn enough money to buy a smartphone that costs $725. Okay? So I want you to just take a minute to think about what inequality would belong here. If you have to earn enough money to buy that smartphone, what inequality would go there? Okay. Jason, you think you know?
7.25H is less than.
No. Here's the setup of the inequality. I don't know. Kyle?
Less than or equal to.
No, not less than, Zach. Okay, because you have to have at least that much money, right? So if you have more than that, that's fine. You still have enough money. But the amount of money you earn at your job has to be more than the cost, or at least equal to the cost of the phone. So what would I do now to solve? Divide both sides by?
7.25.
Okay, so here's a hint. You probably want to star this example for your quiz on Wednesday. Okay?
What page is it on?
This example is number 21 in your homework assignment, page 162. Okay? All right, so the number of hours has to be greater than or equal to 100. Okay? All right, so let's apply. Let's make an application here. All right? What is this saying? What is it saying?
In 100 hours, you're going to make $720.
Yeah. You need to work 100 hours to earn enough money for your cell phone. All right, so how many weeks would that take? Do you think? How many weeks would it take you to work 100 hours? Kyle? 14 weeks?
Like 5 days.
Well, you don't really work very much then if it takes you that long. Five, how many? Dude, you don't work 20 hours a day.
Oh, I'm thinking 24 hours a day.
Okay, hold on. Guys, do you know the average of what you work?
10 hours.
40 hours a week. 40 hours a week. It should take you about 2.5 weeks to earn it if you work full time. Okay, so yes, this is going to be on your quiz. It's not on your homework exactly, all right, but we're making this application. Now, example 5 is not an example in your book, but this is exactly like numbers 34 and 36 on your homework. You have translated sentences already. Basically, write an inequality from the word sentence. Okay, so you're figuring out what operation connects the variable and what inequality symbol belongs there. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and try to break it down and solve it. You do not have to graph your answers on this section. Quotient mean? What does quotient mean? No, what does quotient mean? Divide. Now you have to multiply to solve, but you're dividing in the inequality. So x divided by -3. Oh my goodness, I see something. Okay, x divided by -3 is what? What symbol goes here? Less than or equal to 12. Now, what do I need to do to solve for x? What do I need to do to solve for x? Multiply by -3. And what happens when I multiply by a negative?
You gotta flip it.
Yeah, you gotta flip it.
Yes, the inequality reverses.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Did I forget to reverse the inequality?
Yes.
Ah, goodness. It's supposed to be greater than. All right, not everybody's perfect, okay? All right, greater than or equal to -36. All right, make sure you reverse it. Reverse that inequality. All right, go ahead and solve the last one. I'm going to walk around and check your answers. Okay, so 4 times a number, 4x. 4n, 4c, 4g, whatever you want to say, but it's 4 times a number, is at least. So it can't be less than, it has to be greater than or equal to -36. What do I need to do to solve for x? Divide both sides by 4. Do I switch my inequality? No, because the negative was not connected to the variable. There was a negative over here, but that's not what reverses my inequality. The negative has to be connected to the variable. Here it was not, so I did not reverse my inequality. And remember, guys, on these 2 questions, you do not have to graph it on your homework. All right, and that's everything you need to know for 4.6.